Hello, people. I finished another book. It's called Nagasaki, Life After Nuclear War. It's a very good book. I'm going to try and make this brief. The book gives you a little tiny bit of history of Nagasaki. Then it introduces you into about 5-6 people and tells you a little bit about their life. And then it leads up to where they were when the bomb actually was detonated. August 9th, 11:02, 1945. I've got a lot of notes. Got some new sticky notes, so I have a new system here. We'll see how it works. This is kind of an incredible thing. I mean, we all know about this, but this has only happened twice. Also, there was some fishermen that got fucked up on one of the U.S. tests, and there was a guy that died when they were trying to make this thing. Some guy that accidentally, got overdosed with radiation. A lot of things that I didn't know are in this book. And I'm going to read this second paragraph here. Vice President Harry S. Truman knew nothing about the development of the bomb prior to Roosevelt's death in April of 1945. 2 weeks later, top military advisors briefed Truman about the Manhattan Project and told him that the first bombs would be ready to use on Japan by August. There were no consequential debates on whether to use the bomb at all or prohibit its use on non-combatant Japanese citizens. Top U.S. officials briefly discussed but ultimately vetoed proposals to issue an official warning to Japan or detonate a demonstration bomb over an uninhabited area to intimidate Japan into surrendering. Final plans were made to deliver the bombs as soon as they were ready. So they kept the thing pretty secret, if the vice president didn't even know about it. The Russians had not declared war on Japan, and after Hiroshima, that's when they did. The plane that was to deliver the bomb to Nagasaki was actually a secondary target. The plane was in the air when the Russians declared war on Japan. A lot of propaganda and a lot of justification for the use of the bomb. The most ridiculous thing that I've heard is that the bomb saved the lives of 1 million American casualties. I doubt that we even had 1 million men under arms at that time. So I don't know. Somebody just pulled that out of their ass, and they pulled that out of their ass in 1945. And I still hear people say that. So this one guy, he's a social activist, A.J. Musty, called all the propaganda a demonstration of the logic of atrocity. I thought that was good. And here, Halsey, commander of the 3rd Fleet, was quoted as saying that the bombings were a mistake because at the time they were dropped, Japan was on the verge of surrender. And they were. The Japanese population was starving. There weren't really people clamoring for surrender. You have to, to understand the psyche of the Japanese people at the time. You have to kind of read this book, especially the beginning of the book. Halsey was right, though. They were on the verge of surrender. They were definitely beaten. But I wonder if this maybe wasn't a little bit of inter-service jealousy. The Navy had done the bulk of the work to fight this war, and then here the Air Force ends the war in 2 seconds flat. Okay, I've got the last paragraph and continues on 172. Oh, this is talking about there's quite a Catholic population in Nagasaki, the Catholics go back a long way, and one of the guys, he's a survivor. You know, he says that God dropped the atomic bomb as a test of love and forgiveness. It was good that the bomb was dropped. If it had dropped on people without faith, they could not have borne the burden. The guy's name is Nagai. Uh, he ends up, being bedridden and dying from, the bomb didn't just kill you with the intense heat and the explosion. It killed you later on too, with just being overdosed on radiation like that. Yeah, oddly enough, it even persuaded people to convert to Christianity. The one guy says God is always good, even though it may not appear so in the short term. People later on got really pissed off at the guy. The peace treaty with Japan wasn't signed until 1952. And there was a Nuremberg trial of sorts. There was over 1,000 Japanese who were tried and executed for war crimes. By 1955, not only the U.S., but Russia and Great Britain had nukes. The Japanese got a name for people that had survived, and people that walked around with these horrible scars. Sometimes their face, a lot of times their back, because I guess you see that blinding flash. I guess that's what you do, is you turn your back to it. Haibakusha, and it's a Japanese word, has come to mean people that are destined to die from some kind of cancer. Leukemia was a big one. There was Japanese photographers that went there the day after. So there's that film. It's not film. Those are still photos. There's like 1,000 of those still photos. Later on in August, there was movie shot. And one of the guys, one of the survivors, he watches this movie, and he says, well, that about sums it up, but you would need to have the constant background of screaming and moaning to make it complete. And that must have really been bizarre. To walk through a nuclear wasteland must have really been bizarre. There's a lot of crazy stuff in this book, like, them trying to rebuild, and the bulldozers are pushing up a big pile of debris, and in the debris is countless children's skulls. I don't know if you've ever watched the film Akira. It's probably the coolest anime there is. But the U.S. had in 5-gallon jars in formaldehyde, they have brains and hearts and lungs and all kinds of stuff cut out of corpses scattered around Nagasaki. And these had been shipped to the United States, where they were cataloged and warehoused in an atomic bomb-proof archive outside of Washington for sole use by the U.S. military. It's just really bizarre. In Akira, there's that big domed building, and it's several floors, it's several 100 meters below the surface, and everything is kept sub-freezing. And when I was reading this paragraph, that's what I thought about. It was Akira. So I wonder if the guy that is responsible for Akira knew about that. I'm guessing that he did. Oh, just the propaganda and how we looked at it, and this business is saving a million American lives, and the other business of they deserved it because of Pearl Harbor and their treatment. And the Japanese were pretty brutal, yeah, but nobody deserves an atom bomb dropped on a shit ton of civilians. That's illogical. In 1976, a U.S. group called the Confederate Air Force performed an air show in Texas before an audience of more than 40,000 people. In the finale, a tribute to those who fought in the Pacific War, flew a B-29 overhead as the narrator's voice over loudspeakers proclaimed that the bomb had ended some of the darkest days of American history. A device detonated on the ground beneath the plane to generate a rising mushroom cloud. When news of the air show reached Japan, they were outraged. In 1970, there were 550 nuclear tests, and around the world there were 56,000 nuclear weapons. Oh yeah, there's Americans are coming to grips with this, and they try to have this exhibit in New York, and the exhibit is supposed to be all inclusive. It's going to show pictures of people burned up, but people protested, and Director Harwitt resigned in protest, and 50 U.S. historians signed a letter to Smithsonian Secretary decrying factual errors and omissions contained even in the final streamlined exhibit. They end up just showing a tiny exhibit, and there's no pictures of dead people, and there's really still propaganda associated with this. I'm sorry, but it's a war crime to drop an atom bomb on somebody's city. It's terrorism. It's terrorism to when you're killing a bunch of civilians to try and get what you want, which is the end of the war. That's terrorism. You've struck terror into them. Hamburg and Dresden were also terrorism. And you can't just say people deserve it. Nobody deserves that. Even people in Japan, there was, of course it was because of the occupying force, but there was a lot of propaganda there too. And, propaganda not just, to cover up for the bomb, but propaganda to cover up for some of Japan's actions during the war too. Very good book. I haven't started another one. My son got me a couple books for Father's Day, so I'm going to decide which one I'm going to start. Thanks.